What's going on, guys and girls? It's your boy Captain Smoke, man, and welcome to the first episode of Higher Learning. So, some of you may have read my Reddit post. My father is a drug dealer who was killed next to me. Ask me anything. It's kind of a thing on Reddit as far as ask me anything, but some of you may have read that, and some of you may have not. But basically, about 4 months ago, I went on Reddit, and after reading quite a few of the Ask Me Anything posts, I was inspired to kind of share my story, so I did. And to my surprise, almost like 2,000 people interacted with the post, upvoted it, commented on it, sent a lot of love, and there were some people with some pretty good questions too, which I'll get to a little bit later. But I just wanted to start off by giving a couple personal shout outs to some people who really said some kind words on the post. So first shout out goes out to Regal2. He says, reading this statement, among others, has made me resolve to be more honest in therapy. I'm only a month in. I'm 37 and I've been struggling for years, and I feel exactly as you described. I don't want to be a burden. Thank you for taking the pressure off. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being so honest. I swear to God, you just changed my life. Also, side note, I grew up in a drug dealing family, so I feel this on another level. So Regal2, I appreciate you, sharing those kind words and really, giving such an honest answer yourself, an honest response, and hopefully your therapy's going well, my man. Hopefully, things are looking up for you. And, I would really like to get you on the podcast so we can have, a deeper conversation about, some of the things we went through and how we're dealing with it, throughout life. So hopefully you're listening to this, man. Once again, I appreciate you. All right, so next we have Kelly KTJ95, who says, it seems really crystal clear that you need to write a book, and that book needs to be turned into a screenplay, and the movie that comes from this will get Leonardo DiCaprio an Oscar. Your writing is excellent. I felt everything and was captivated from the first word through each and every one of your responses. You are a warrior, and you sound light years ahead of your age. You are an incredibly, and I cannot stress this enough, incredibly special person. I truly wish you the very best life has to offer. You are worthy of really wonderful things. I urge you to start writing. Your story is so compelling. Start writing as soon as you can, and don't stop until you have a bunch of pages with text on them, and find a publisher or get in contact with someone in film. Your story needs to be heard. Kelly, I really appreciate those kind words. And you two people are one of the reasons why I'm, on this platform right now, starting this platform and taking my message to, a bigger stage and out of the subreddit and, onto the world stage. So, without further ado, guys, basically, I want to provide a little bit of context around the story, because I understand, reading it back, for somebody reading it who doesn't know anything else about me other than what they're reading on the post, there's a lot of information that, you wouldn't have any idea about. So, I want to provide a little backstory, starting off with just my whole parent situation. And I mentioned living in two different places. So let's just start from the beginning. So my parents met in high school in California, the Bay Area. And, my dad was in the streets or whatever. And I think my grandma kind of knew, or she was pretty, she was suspecting that or suspicious of that. Basically that was pretty much confirmed one day after a dice game gone wrong, right? And apparently, this guy and my dad had words, and that led to the guy following my dad home to, his mom's house, my grandma's house. Not my mom's mom, but his mom's house. So, long story short, he ended up killing the guy. And, it was real self-defense and everything, but that guy's family obviously took issue with everything. And, word of, everything obviously got back to my mom's mom, and she really wasn't having that. And so she ended up moving, down with my mom, back down south. But, nobody knew at the time my mom was already pregnant with me. So they found that out shortly after, they got settled in here or whatever. And so from there, like, my dad came to visit me, obviously when I was born, and then ended up getting locked up for a couple years, or like a little bit under 2 years, I think it was. And I was really, really young, but I still remember it because I remember this birthday card that somebody like hand drew for me, and I still have it somewhere. But anyway, long story short, after that, after he got out, we would go visit him for like Christmas and stuff, him and my other family. And we kept doing that until I was about 5 or 6, because that's when I was able to start flying by myself for the summer. So, every summer after, every school year, at the end of the school year, after it let out, I would go straight to California. I'd hop straight on a plane and go to California and stay there as long as possible until, a week or two before school. And that was pretty much, the highlight of the year, obviously. But that, everything went like that for like 6 years. And so we're going to just fast forward to 2007, which is where everything actually happened. So this year when I got there, the vibe was off. Like, usually it, there was like this vibe, and nothing could, stop the fun we were having. Nothing bad could happen. It felt like, my dad was like invincible, and thus I was too. Not that I was, but I just never felt like in danger or anything, or I never felt like he was in danger until this particular summer. For whatever reason, I had like a very strong feeling that, he was in danger. And, to the point where I was like looking out for it, like expecting it all, like, literally. Yeah, so one day we were at the bowling alley, and, having fun per usual. And, it had gotten late, probably around 9-10. So we, headed back to the house. And, when we were walking, to the door, when he got to the door, there was like, the first thing that was suspicious though, is like, there was a car parked, running, facing towards the street at the end of the road. And I didn't notice it until he looked at it. So when he got out the car, before he started walking to the door, he turned around and looked. Like, he had this like strange look on his face, because there were, he looked towards the car. And so that's when I seen it, but I didn't see anything else. So, after that, he turned around and, walked to the door. So I'll try to paint a visual, because, I'm doing some sort of hand gestures on screen here. But, for those of you that's listening on the DSP, such as Spotify, Apple Music, all of that, I'll try to give you a verbal representation. So we have a driveway, we had a driveway, and then there was like an L-shaped sidewalk, right? So you walk out of the driveway, and then, it's like an L-shaped sidewalk. So there's like a short, walkway, and then you would take like a right, and there's a pretty long stretch of sidewalk to hit the door. And then on the left of that, the sidewalk, there's the front yard, which extends all the way out to the end of the street, obviously. So, another part of the story is I had Heelys on, so I wasn't really aware of my surroundings. I was trying to skate down the driveway instead of, walking up, around the car. I tried to skate down and walk back up around, which was kind of weird and awkward to do on the cement. So I ended up stepping in the grass, because also, Heelys, if you ever wore them back in those days, they were really like loud when they hit the cement, clicking and clacking. So anyway, try not to keep this too long, but, yeah, so we're walking up the door. My dad's closer to the door than I am. And I'm like, in the grass, like I said, to the left of the sidewalk. And, as soon as he touched the door, I was like, so if he's here, he's at the door, I'm probably, 2 to 3 feet behind him and a foot left in the yard. So anyway, we hear these footsteps, like somebody running up, and we both immediately turned around. And this is like as soon as his hand touched the door. Now we had 2 doors, a screen door and, the actual door. So when his hand was on the screen door, the guy, ran up, like do 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 do, like you're playing a first person shooter and you hear some footsteps in your headphones and you turn really quickly. It was like that. So I turn around and there was a guy with a gun in my, basically in my face. It was pointed at my dad, but like I said, I was further away from the door than he was. So I was closer to the guy, and thus the gun, which was pointed at him, which would still be considered point blank range, like for him, but I was even closer than that and off to the side in the yard once again. So basically we both turned around in a split second. My dad saw it and like instantly rushed the guy, punching him in the face. And it was at that point I realized that there was another guy behind him, like in the middle of the street, who who was there to, like, once he got us in the door or got the door open, he was gonna help like take whatever stuff out and into the getaway car. But like I said, my dad rushed the guy, the gunman, and punched him, knocked him down, which bang, like it all happened at the same time. Like he hit the guy, the gun went off. I'm just standing there, like everything's kind of going in slow mo, but it's all happening over the course of seconds though. So at this point, like my dad like runs over the guy, like the guy's on the ground, he continues running straight towards the other guy, who then takes off running. I didn't really see if he had a gun or not. He was kind of far back and there was like literally a gunman right here. So he's like chasing the other guy basically. And then the gunman's like fumbling. You know how when you stumble and you're like scrambling to get on your feet, he's doing one of those numbers. And, I'm looking at him. He's kind of looking at me like, what the heck? And, I'm just like, wow, that really just happened. And, yeah, he got up and ran and, the car, you see the getaway car, skirt off or whatnot. And so then I'm just standing there like waiting for my dad to come back. But, obviously he doesn't. So I like start walking or whatever down the driveway or down the like yard. And for whatever reason, I turned the wrong way. Like obviously all the action went left and I turned right and there was no lights. Like for whatever reason, all the street lights like to the right were completely out. It was pitch black. We had street lights where we were. So I don't know like how I didn't see anything, but as far as left, but for whatever reason, I went right and walked the long way. And there were some people outside, some Hispanic guys who were asking me what just happened. And I basically told them, and they ended up knowing my dad and my uncle. And because like I didn't have my uncle's phone number in my phone for whatever reason. Like I think I had got a new phone, like how you used to switch your SIM cards out or whatever. I think I did one of those and I didn't have my numbers or whatever. So they ended up calling him. So then I walked back down. And that's when I seen like the neighbors across the street from us who were just like standing over, like, they were standing over something. And obviously it was my dad or whatever. But I just kind of like walked up and I couldn't say anything. I didn't know like what this, like, there was nothing to say. It was just like, damn. And then obviously the police had been called or whatnot. And so they pull up a little bit later. And, the ambulance comes. I'm not sure if they arrived together or if the ambulance maybe arrived a little bit later, but you're not going to get an ambulance without police. So, anyway, there's like this Asian rookie cop who didn't really seem interested in being there, which I mean, granted, late, it's a job, it's a new case that you probably don't want to work, all of that kind of stuff. But he was just asking me to, the same questions over and over again. And I, kept answering them or whatever. And, but the whole time I'm looking over his shoulder at my dad on the ground in the ambulance, like, the door's open. Nobody's really moving to like get him in there though. He's just kind of on the ground. And then eventually they kind of go through his pockets, which, at that point it looked like they were trying to, start picking him up and loading him in or whatnot. He seemed to be breathing at the time or whatever. But, at that point, once they were going through his pockets, they found like a couple 8 balls of cocaine. And so they put those like on the ground and they stopped messing with them. They put them back, like, they kind of like stopped messing with them for a while. And then like, I guess they wanted to, see what the cops wanted to do about it or this, that, and the third. And, yeah, so I can't really speak on a time frame because everything, seems kind of warped as far as like how long we were standing out there. All I know, it was like cold because we had left like early in the day. So all I had was like basketball shorts on and a white tee in my Heelys, like blue and white Heelys, white tee, blue shorts, that kind of thing. So it was kind of cold. So we were just standing out there. I was like, wanting to go inside and like change clothes, but I knew there was all kind of shit in the house that they didn't need to, be around. So long story short, I ended up going to the police station. They put me in the back of a police car and took me to the police station for about 12 hours and asked me the same questions again and all that kind of stuff. And eventually dropped me off at my grandma's house for me to, tell the same story again, to everybody else that wanted to know. And, that kind of thing, how that goes. So, that's pretty much it. After that, shortly after that, I went back home and, went to basketball camp. After that, I, had to go to band camp because I was, I forgot to mention that this was the summer before my freshman year of high school. So I had been playing percussion since like 4th grade, 5th grade or whatever. So I was on the drum line, so I had to attend camp. So everything was just happening really fast. So it made it easy for me to kind of just like bottle everything and push it to the side and focus on, the task at hand. And that just kind of snowballed, over the years and just led to, kind of just being good at hiding things or, not reacting outwardly to things. Because, my thing is if like I could keep a straight face or, keep cool, calm and collected at, the crime scene with my dad laying there and the police asking me, what happened after all that. I didn't, scream, cry, yell or nothing, during any of that. So it's just like, when people expect me to do that for trivial everyday issues, it just, it just doesn't really mix well. So, anyway, guys, now I want to jump into some of the questions some of the people of Reddit had, some of the questions they wanted answered or some of the statements. And then, I'll be able to respond and hopefully shed some light on the situation. All right. So let's get into these questions. Now, a few people had quite a bit to say about the gun situation because, obviously I'm a lot more detailed in the post. So let me just read the questions to you. So Harry Toast 2 says, calling bullshit. You were a 12-year-old and you knew exactly what gun they used when it supposedly happened in a few seconds. You're telling me that a 12-year-old figured out the make and model of a gun. Fair enough, Harry Toast. Mathematical Genius says, at the age of 12, how did you recognize the weapon as a Glock, specifically a 19, especially in the dark? Why was your father left on the ground after finding drugs on his person? How long ago did this happen? And what's your favorite kind of cheese? All right, so my response on the Reddit post was, if you grew up in China, you'd probably speak Mandarin. In America's darkest area, 12-year-olds are killing with Glocks. It'd be more surprising to find a 12-year-old there who couldn't simply identify one. Let's see. And then also, Goatster's Paradise says, at the age of 12, I was putting bullets inside of bullets at 500 meters. We all have different upbringings, especially in America. It's not uncommon for kids to know about guns. And then, Kajika Audex says, video games. And Laura J said, at the age of 10, I knew what a Glock was from Counter-Strike 1.6. All right, so basically, I agree to all those responses I agree with all those responses, and I'm pretty much a little bit of all of them. So in the case of identifying the Glock, for one, growing up in the South, I didn't have like a super close relationship with my grandpa, either one, but the one here was a Vietnam veteran, or is a Vietnam veteran, and he loves hunting, shooting, fishing, and outdoors. So from a very young age, even before he actually took me shooting, he was showing me the weapons and teaching me how to teaching me about them safely and teaching me like basic gun safety before we ever even thought about shooting. And so of course he had Glocks and also other firearms like 1911s and etc. And the Glock is probably the most popular pistol in the world. But basically it boils down to this. The Glock comes in 3 basic sizes. Okay. You have your baby Glock, which is like in 9mm, that's the Glock 26. You have your Glock 19 here, which is the one I saw and identified. And you have your Glock 17, which is a full size. So it was definite. I wasn't really saying for sure it was a 19. You would have to check a ballistics report for that, because, the 40 cal, I think, is the 23. And then I think they have a 45. Those all come in, the same size as well. And obviously the firearm is empty. I would never bring it out of the gun safe room with any ammunition or anything like that, unless it was a combat scenario. So, I don't feel like I need to do that on camera as well to make you feel safe at home. But anyway, so I played a lot of video games also. I played a lot of first person shooters. My favorite at the time, I was actually playing, that summer heavily Rainbow Six Vegas. What we would do is play terrorist hunt on LVU campus. Any of you guys that was outside when, Rainbow Six came out, Rainbow Six Vegas, you know what I'm talking about. Like, so Rainbow Six Vegas, you get 4 friends or 3 friends and yourself, and 4-man squad, and clear out, this college campus full of terrorists, basically. And we would do like pistols only and stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time looking down the sights of a Glock, just on a first person shooter level before I ever owned one or held one for myself. Well, maybe not before I held one myself, but before I owned one myself. On top of that, you can down here, you can walk into any, sporting goods store and see the whole Glock display. So, I mean, it's really not that far-fetched. On top of that, like, if I had like a 10-year-old cousin who was interested in guns, I could safely show him how to, handle and operate a firearm and identify it. So hopefully that's the satisfactory answer. But, to sum it all up, Glocks are like one of the most unique looking pistols on the market, simply for how square it is. That's very noticeable. And when there's like a gun in your face, you're going to notice, a lot about it. Like, if it wasn't as like, such an iconic weapon, it would be a lot harder. I agree. But, even if somebody, came and stuck a Beretta M9 in your face, you're going to know what that is from playing Call of Duty all of these years. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not as far-fetched as some of you guys are thinking. Even though I understand you guys have lived, really like safe and sheltered lives, and that's good for you. I'm not wishing anything, otherwise. But sometimes you just got to think outside the box. That's really what higher learning is for, guys. It's connecting people with different perspectives, So, Sushi and Wow basically, he responding to a piece of he quoted a piece of the article and said, can you tell us more about the precognition? What did it feel like? Was it detailed or vague? And in what way was it strong? So, precognition is basically what I was talking about earlier, when I had the really strong feeling that something was going to happen. So it was kind of like, or it was like imagine thoughts in your head that you didn't produce. Like, that sounds crazy, like schizophrenic, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like, I was talking to an invisible person or something like that. It was just like, like, I remember like my dad walking by one day and then like a voice saying something about he's going to die or something in my head. And I thought I was like crazy or just needed some sleep or something like that. But, I had been staying up too late or playing too many video games, like all the stuff that they say, I thought maybe that was true or something, but, it was like the strongest gut feeling I had ever had about anything. And, I couldn't shake it. And, it happened. So that really, that was really a large part of, why the recovery process is so, difficult, I guess you can say, because, what does that mean for, for life? In the next episode, we'll get into, some of, my beliefs and everything like that. But, for now, let's just suffice to say it was kind of a supernatural experience in the sense that you couldn't call that normal or ordinary. And it's not something I talk about a lot because, it's one of those things that, people will find hard to believe or, it just kind of seems a bit much. All right, but moving on, Dark Memes for the Lad wants to know, did you see your father as any less once you found out he was a dealer? No. And when you say like found out, there wasn't really any one moment where I just like found out. It was just kind of like, observing things over the years and just confirming things I already knew to be true. There was a lot of, a lot of things. Like I said, he went to jail when I was younger. There was once when we were there for Christmas where he was shot. But there was a story that, it wasn't like meant for him. He was like in a club where they were shooting and was shot in the leg. So like, I don't know like that, like if that was the actual story or if something actually happened or whatever. But, there was a lot of things that were like abnormal, I guess you could say, that I kind of noticed and filed away. But I think the reason why like the adults and like the OGs, if you will, liked me hanging around is because I wasn't the kid that like asked any questions or, repeated things that people said or like told, things, repeated things that like, it was like, what happens, here stays here. That, I was that kind of kid. I just stayed and like soaked up a lot of stuff and, a lot of things that people would never know or, I've seen a lot of things a lot of people wouldn't expect me to see, just, off the strength of being that type of person. So I definitely didn't see my father as any less because he was a very giving person. He was the kind of guy like, when the ice cream truck would come up, pass through the neighborhood, every kid that was outside got ice cream, the family members that, pulled up and wanted to borrow $40-$50, but never pay it back for like bingo or, whatever their vices were, he was that person that they always went to because he was never really going to say no. He was never going to be on your back about paying him back. And, sadly, a lot of those same people were at the funeral, acting like, they were turning their nose up at it, like they didn't understand, what was going on. Even though some of these people had been, collecting money from him since he was, 13, 14, 15. So, how could you not know what was going on? But anyway, that's another discussion for another time, possibly another platform. All right, so Spats Gamer YT wants to know, did you ever consider your dad's business as a viable job? And were you guys living a big life or was he really small time? So, no, I never considered drug dealing like as a viable option for me. But I did like the whole business aspect of, having a product, selling it to consumers and, making a profit off of it. And not just your traditional, come to work for this many hours and we're going to pay you this every year. And that's just kind of, what you're, forced to live on. And, that just seemed more attractive to me, but in a legal capacity to where I could, really do as much as possible and, go all out. But as far as, where we live in the big life, no, they found, hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash in the house, but, we weren't, flashy people. He wasn't a flashy guy. He wasn't the type to, pull up in a new Beamer or, all of that kind of crazy shit or like, but, in the Bay Area, y'all don't know what I'm talking about when I say we did have a couple of scrapers. I'm not going to lie to you, but, it is what it is. It's neither here nor there. But, we lived a good life. It was, we had a nice, normal house. We loved the outdoors and going on adventures and playing games and, doing all kind of stuff. All right. So Keena Grace 96 says, RIP Dad, you are sorely missed. Thank you for sharing your story. I just have a couple questions. What did you and your dad like to do together for fun, and what are you doing now? And then also, Sparta Slick 32 says, excuse me, pretty wild story. Sorry you have to deal with that trauma. It's interesting to me to read your several compliments of him. To us, he was a drug dealer. To you, he was dad. Keep healing, dude. So both of those questions are kind of, I wanted to pair them together because the answer to the first question is pretty much, what's interesting about the second question / statement. So the thing that Sparta Slick said here, to us, he was a drug dealer. To you, he was his dad. I think that speaks a lot to, what the stereotypes of what, a drug dealer is or what a drug dealer looks like or acts like, in our society to those who, don't know. But basically, a lot of people, that you might work with or that, the guy doing your oil change, or the guys working at your factory, your local factories, they might need a little something to take the edge off, and somebody's going to provide it. They might not look like or act like what you expect. They might not live where you expect. All these kind of things. But as far as being more than a dealer, you're absolutely right. Like, I really didn't see him as a dealer because we did like so much other than that. For me, a lot of things were positive, the fact that that's what he did, in the sense that we had, like, when I was out there, we had like all the time to spend together. It wasn't like, I would go out there for the summer and he still had to, work 8 hours a day with a 2-hour commute. So, by the time he does get off, there's really not a lot of time to, do summer activities or whatnot. So that was a great thing. It gave us a lot of time to do a lot of things. As far as what we did for fun, and first of all, he was a diehard Raider fan. I have my Bo Jackson jersey that I wore to his funeral on right now. He was actually buried in a Charles Woodson jersey. So Raiders, he loved the Raiders. And so obviously I was born in Raider gear, and I've always loved the Raiders, been a lifelong fan myself. But his favorite pastime by far was fishing, though. So he taught me how to fish at a young age. I always loved fishing. Even before I ever went fishing, I loved like the idea. Like, I always wanted to go fishing. Like, as a small kid, like, I would watch the Outdoor Channel, and I always wanted to do that. So we fished a lot, like maybe 2-3 times a week minimum. When we were out there, we had a boat. We went on charter boats. One of my best memories, probably like one of the best memories of my life, is fishing under the Golden Gate Bridge and winning the pot for catching the largest salmon, because we were very competitive. We love to compete in everything. So not only did I catch a bigger fish than him, I caught the biggest fish on the boat. So that was bragging rights for life. Like, I didn't care. It is what it is. And then to top it off, obviously we took it home and filleted it and grilled it. And I mean, that was the best salmon I'll ever have. Like, I don't think salmon can ever taste that good, no matter the circumstances, just because of like, just the adventure to get it. We also went camping, once we went camping, when we went camping, we always went camping by the ocean so we could just fish, and we love to do the whole, you only eat what you catch. If you don't catch anything, you don't eat. But, the fish were biting so crazy out there that we, had a little taster of every species. We also love playing video games. Like I said earlier, if you were around when the original Halo came out, you already know how great of a party game that was. But imagine, like 10, hustlers or whatever in a room, like, let's see. Yeah. In a room, right? 4-on-4. And then 2 kids, me and my best friend, Tim, which was like my brother, basically. And the 2 kids are whooping everybody, though. Like, the 2 kids destroying everybody and talking trash. And like, you would just have to be there to understand how like special of a moment that was, because, man, it's just, those are just good times, guys. Obviously that's in the past, but, you still just remember how much fun you used to have back in those days. We used to play Madden and 2K as well, but Halo, the original Halo, nothing will ever replace that. Like, those tournaments, like, man. And just, other random stuff we used to compete in. My dad played darts. He was in a dart league. Like I said, we were really into bowling. We had actually like just bought bowling balls and stuff, trying to get really into bowling right before he passed away. Like I said, we were coming from the bowling alley when that happened. We would like to set up, we do barbecues or whatever and set up badminton nets, play volleyball or whatever, handball, basketball. We had a ping pong table in the backyard. We used to, we loved competing, just, challenging each other at stuff, trying to beat him. And then, me discovering new things to challenge him to, like, like I would be like, I'd find a new game and low key get good at it on the side, then, introduce him to it and beat him at it. And of course he had to like get good until he could like beat me or whatever. But, also swimming and diving, there was this really deep pool, like, 13 feet to 20 feet. And, we would like throw quarters in there and dive, see who could get it first. And just stuff like that, man. Batting cages, go-karts, mini golf. We had a lot of fun. We did a whole bunch of stuff. It was almost like, he and my uncles and stuff, they were like joining in and like reliving their childhood with us, like the childhood they should have had while they were like hustling and stuff like that, while they had to hustle and do all of that. They were like giving us that childhood, but like also like enjoying it with us. So that's like the best way I could describe it. But, every day was something fun, like regardless, it wasn't always just spending money or whatever. Sometimes it was, just barbecuing in the backyard and balling up foil and inventing our own little handball, baseball game, stuff like that, All right, let's see. Next question. I kind of went a long time on that one. Sorry about that. All right, so Pag Nasty wanted to know, did you know your dad was a drug dealer? If yes, then how? So I kind of answered that one earlier, but I'll just put it like this. I kind of always knew that, but I just confirmed it with my own two eyes and just kind of kept it to myself. I never asked him or something like that. It was just kind of just got to a point where I knew, and then to the point where he knew I knew, and I knew he knew I knew, if that makes sense. So it was just kind of like, what's understood doesn't need to be said, or, that kind of stuff. All right. So Bree JT wants to know, or she says, your description is so detailed. Why do you think the details have stuck with you so clearly over the years? Have you had therapy? Did you struggle with PTSD? So the short answer to that question, to both of those questions, is yes. So I immediately went into therapy. And, my therapist or whatever was telling me about PTSD, and basically like, you experience something traumatic. So expect PTSD, like expect the PTSD. These are some of the common symptoms or whatever. But I think I was kind of looking at it like a test or an evaluation. And, when you're in the school system, you're trained to like pass tests, like not necessarily, you're trained to pass the test, not necessarily put your feelings into it or whatever. So I think I was looking at it like kind of like a test that I needed to pass. So I went in there real upbeat, and I was making the lady laugh, and we were holding like conversations that had nothing to do with, anything as far as me or whatever I was thinking. And, because at that time, like I said, I don't even think I had begun to process everything. It was just, I had so much going on. And it was just kind of like, obviously the people that care about you want to know you're okay or whatever. So, but the thing is, it's up to you to tell them if you're okay or not. So it's just like, yeah, I'm fine or whatever. Then that's that, like, are you sure? It's only so many times they can ask you, like, are you sure, without, before they believe you, like, all right, I mean, I guess you're cool or whatever. So as far as struggling with PTSD, I mean, of course, that's something that I don't want to say I think I'll probably always struggle with, but I just feel like there are certain things that changed about me that'll never change back or whatever. And so sticking with therapy real quick before I jump into the PTSD side, I recently, before writing the article on Reddit, I recently had another go at therapy. I did about 4 or 5 sessions, I believe, with a new therapist or whatever. And because I hadn't been for like a very long time at that point, so I thought I'd try it again. And being at a more advanced state and understanding like how I approached the first time and how I was going to approach this time differently. And I don't know, I kind of felt like I overwhelmed my therapist a little bit with, as far as like, because I understand you're supposed to like build up a relationship, but I kind of wanted to get into, because the way I look at therapy is like, you're going there for like a neutral source to ask you questions, as far, questions that jog your own brain. because really it's not about what they're going to say to you about you. It's about what you say. Like they'll ask you a question about yourself and you'll answer it and you'll get something that you really didn't, you weren't consciously aware of. And so that's what therapy is. It's to pull stuff out of you, in my opinion. So I was looking for that. So basically my first couple sessions, I was really just trying to get him caught up. So, it was at least the first 2 sessions we were like, we had gone overtime, just, going back and forth, having a conversation, chopping it up or whatever. But at the end of the day, I feel like it kind of, after about 4 or 5 sessions, I didn't feel like it was going in the direction I necessarily needed it to go as far as helping me achieve my higher self, which is what it's all about or whatever. So I tried something else. I actually got a Christmas present from my mom that was like a spiritual counseling or something like that, which obviously, I was kind of skeptical of, but, she swore by it. And, she, like I said, she had already gotten it for me. So I was open-minded and tried it. And it was actually really crazy and amazing. Without giving any information about myself, he just knew a lot of things. And it wasn't like, oh, you're gonna meet somebody here, or on, your sign is this, or, like some Miss Cleo type stuff. It wasn't like that. It was just more like he was coming in like, okay, well, I feel like you've been having trouble with your digestive system, and that's absolutely true. And he was trying to tell me like, well, your body doesn't process beef well. And I mean, honestly, the skeptics out there are going to say, well, that's easy when everybody knows like the human body doesn't process beef well. So, but that was just the first thing without me even saying nothing. Then he was talking about like your spine's out of line, which is true. I've been needing to go to the chiropractor again for a while. I wonder if I could get like a crack on the mic. Oh, that was a good one. But yeah. So yeah, all of that. But it's a lot of things. I actually have the footage. I could, one of these podcast episodes, I might bring that out, or that might be something for the Patreon premium, content subscribers. But yeah, guys, I felt like that was more helpful. That session was a lot more helpful than any other like formal counseling that I received. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it was just straight to the point. Like I felt like he already knew me or my spirit, or just because he knew a lot of things. It was like I didn't give any information about myself, and he just knew a lot of things. And some of the things that he said I didn't know, like they were in the future. And I don't know. It's weird, guys. I'll get more into it in a later episode. But that's, my therapy experience thus far. But I'm moving to podcasting because I look at that as kind of like therapy. Just getting this kind of stuff off my chest, expressing my thoughts and feelings about certain things with people like I did on Reddit, helped me connect with people who share similar experiences. So I feel like this is a good form of therapy in and of itself. And, it can bring in and connect me with other people who also struggle with these things. So jumping into the PTSD side of things, first thing I want to say is that PTSD is something like it's a term that's thrown around a lot. So I really don't like to talk about it because nowadays it's kind of become trendy or whatever. And so I kind of feel like, it's kind of almost habit to where when you hear somebody mention it, you kind of get that vibe, but you kind of look at it like, oh, are you just, is it just one, you're just using these trigger words. I seen recently somebody on Twitter claiming they had PTSD from, tweets or something. And so that's why they tweeted something out that had nothing to do with anything. But that's neither here nor there at the moment. But I think when the PTSD for me, it showed itself in, or it shows itself in ways, my like symptoms for me would be like the biggest one for me would be isolation because I'm an only child on my mom's side anyway, so I always grew up only child. And I really loved my alone time. It was to the point where like friends would come over and I'd be ready for them to leave just so I could enjoy my time alone again. And so that like went times 10 after everything happened, and just feeling like overall general lack of connection with people, like, if you talk to veterans who, go to war and come back, they don't really connect with people the same way because people don't know what they've been through. So it's like the people that knew them before knew a different person, and they don't really know this person, but they're expecting the old person. So you the veteran or whatever, try to give them that as much as you can, but you can't. So it leads to like a disconnect because you're not able to provide that person. And it's like, you just want to, figure out all the things you have going on versus trying to put on a face to fit back into society. That probably didn't make a lot of sense, but hopefully it did to somebody. But yeah, I don't feel like I even look at connections with people the same, like people you're going to meet. Like, I don't really look at people as people, I don't really look at people as people that are going to be like permanent fixtures in my life or whatever. I don't, that aren't already permanent fixtures in my life, I try to like foreshadow a lot. I try to look ahead a lot. I try to look at the bigger picture a lot. It's, when dealing with people, I try to pay more attention to red flags, things like gut feelings for sure. Gut feelings I pay attention to. I don't really try to doubt them anymore after all of that. I can't really think of too many times I had like a strong gut feeling about something and have been wrong. So, like I talked about earlier, like that switch was flipped, and that's what kept me calm or whatever. But the thing is, it's not like a switch that I can flip on and off at will. So a lot of times I come off as like not caring or not, or angry or mad. Not angry or mad, but like, I don't know, just people like don't really know how I'm feeling. Like they might ask me like, oh, are you mad? And I might be happy, or what's wrong with you? And nothing's wrong. But so I just kind of, it's kind of like I'm stuck in that. It's like normal people measure their emotions on a scale of 1 to 10, but I like, once you experience an event that takes your emotions to like 1,000,000, it just kind of like breaks the scale and things don't even really register like that. And so that, that becomes difficult when you try to get into a relationship because, women want you to be, super sensitive, which, I understand, but it gets to a point where they're overly sensitive about things that don't really matter as much to you because, your perspective, well, my perspective on life is different than somebody who, maybe hasn't experienced as bad of days as I have or some other people have. And, another thing about the PTSD is I felt really sad for others because I noticed how, huge of an impact, this 10 seconds had on my life. What about, combat veterans who live in this environment for months at a time or years at a time? What about the kids, for example, in like Syria, the kids who are just kids growing up, they didn't choose where they were born or who they were born to. But, all of a sudden a mortar comes through their house and now they're homeless and half their family's dead and they don't really even know why. Just stuff like that. Like, how do you go on living normally after that? Like, say, a victim of that type of situation I just named comes, to another country or goes to another country where they're safe, but how do they blend back into society? You look at in America, the inner cities, all over that they don't really want to talk about unless it's, campaigning for something. But, you look at these inner cities where kids are, killing each other or whatever. Nobody wants to talk about the PTSD all of them must be going through on a daily basis because, they're killing and then, they're killing in revenge for the friend that they saw killed next to them. And then they're going and killing and scarring other people who are going to come back and kill. And it's just a blood feud like the Hatfields and McCoys that's just never ending. But it's in every hood in America that this is happening. And, the people that have nothing to do with that, they would love to boil it all down to, people are just savages, and it really just boils down to a sickness, though. And I mean, we can get into that a little bit later, but we're talking about PTSD and its causes. I've seen a lot of like good people feel like they have to be this hard, tough, violent, murderous individual just to survive. And they still don't survive. They die, but, they take a lot of people to the grave with them. So, like my best friend, who I was saying was my partner in the Halo tournaments, he also passed away. He was killed also, also living that same life. So it's just like, at a certain point, you don't ever want to hear that. You don't ever want to be there. Like, you don't ever want to see that. You don't ever want to get that kind of call. You don't ever want to go to that funeral. You don't ever want to like stand on that gravesite. But at the end of the day, what we all have to realize is, if you're in the streets or if your family's in the streets, like, this is the likely outcome. Like, this isn't the shocking part of the streets. Like, I remember my dad, or, I remember like my uncles and, stuff like that, telling stories where, they were surprised to make it to 18 or whatever. And as sad as that is, it's the reality for a lot of people. So when things like this happen, it's not really abnormal in the grand scheme of things. So that's just basically, I look at it like that. Like, I feel a deep disturbance for others who have to be going through much worse than I could ever imagine experiencing, and not being able to, move and place themselves and live in a healthy environment like I did, to kind of process things and try to flourish despite, they're still in the environment. Like, you can't forget about healing from, one friend being killed. You got another friend being killed the next day, and you're on the chopping block too. So you're looking over your shoulder. You also have the law on you. Like, I can't understand like what that must do to somebody mentally. Especially considering what 10 seconds did to my whole situation. It's a lot of innocent bystanders scarred by the streets, man. And, I'm just one of them, to be honest with you. But like I said, all my friends are dead. Like Lil Uzi, said in EXO Tour Life, and it's sad. And I mean, all my friends from out there, from that area, because they all got involved in the streets, man. And I think if, I just think if they had the support and the resources to, do something else. And the key word there is the support, because, it's easy to say you can do something else, put the gun down and pick up a book. Like, that's easy to say, but it's the support. It's the somebody has to make them believe that that's going to lead them to success, because what they see as success is the person that's able to put food on a table and clothes on their backs and, have the nice things that they want. And so if they're achieving that through the streets, then they don't really give the book much of a second thought. So you have to show them how they can be successful. Like, you have to give them an example, like the street guys are giving them an example. Like, hey, this is, they show them the money and, the things they want. And that's what entices them to even pick up, a quarter brick in the first place. So what are you, so it's like, before you tell somebody to put that down and pick up something else, I feel like if it's actually ever going to work, you have to have like something else for them to pick up. But yeah, guys, on that note, I want to get into another topic, dealing with PTSD, and that is self-medication. as I self-medicate. We're gonna go ahead and take a quick smoke break here, guys. Mellow out. We've been having some pretty heavy conversations, discussing some pretty heavy things. Cheers. All right, so as you know, guys, more and more states are starting to legalize cannabis for medical and recreational use. Even my state just recently legalized CBD, so we're on our way. So we're not all the way there yet, but we do have CBD dispensaries now. I haven't tried any yet. Maybe that's another thing we'll do here on the pod. Give you a little, give you the lowdown on that. That'll help me stop smoking cigarettes as well, I believe. So I'll see what the prices are looking like, and if that'll be a smooth transition or what. But for me, self-medication started at about 16. Like I said, I tried a lot of other. Well, I never tried any other drugs or anything. But for me, before I ever tried any smoked weed or anything like that, I was into activity. So that was kind of my high, discovering a new activity and then getting good at it. And then, once the spark kind of wore off, find something else and, just trying different things just to see, trying to find that thing that I really love or whatever. And also just that feeling of accomplishing, something or learning something that, you couldn't do at one point. It just gives you kind of a natural high, in my opinion. Just improvement, I guess you could say. But at I think about 16 is when I first smoked. But it wasn't until I got to college, probably about 2011, 2012. So that's either 17 or 18 or something like that. That's when I had I guess you could say I bet my first plug, connect, my first not big connect, but the connect that had some real strong in, and we were classmates in culinary school. We were in the same group, so I got the group discount, so I was getting the strong for the great price. And so I had never smoked anything that crazy strong. I think it was some train wreck, and he also had he had another strain that man, I can't think of the other strain right now off the top. I kind of want to say AK-47, but it wasn't AK-47. It was train wreck and something else. He had two different strains. I want to say he had more of a sativa also. That's neither here nor there, because train wreck is whoo man. Anyway. Oh wait, hold on. No, yeah, that was my Skywalker OG guy. If I get my boy Damo in here to talk about that, yeah. So he had train wreck and Skywalker OG. Not at the same time. I think I tried the train wreck first, but the Skywalker OG was some of the best bud I ever had to this day. But anyway, that was my first real smoking experience. I went over their dorm room because two of the guys that were in my group were roommates or whatever. So I went over there and hung out with them after, because we had just passed our midterm with flying colors, a group midterm or whatever. So we went over there and had kind of a chill party, rolled up a bunch of bud. And we're just chilling on the couch watching Talladega Nights and all kind of funny movies. And that was the first time I really really got super stoned, to the point where you start, that first time you get super stoned and you start that your thoughts in your head are super loud, and it's the movies type stone, that kind of. And so from there I just felt totally at ease, at peace. I was really genuinely laughing from the heart. I just felt like a weight lifted off my shoulder, kind of. And I just couldn't stop laughing. It was uncontrollable. Like, I was that guy. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of embarrassing, but like I could not stop laughing at Talladega Nights. Like that movie, like like I can't stop laughing like sober, but that time was it was embarrassing how much I was laughing. But either way, it was from that moment that I knew that like I had kind of found something that was gonna be around for the rest of my life, probably, because ever since that moment, I hadn't felt that like at ease and free. So anyway, I took I bought like quite a bit off of him and took it home with me. And, once I got by myself and like smoked again, like by myself, and just really got, alone with my thoughts or whatever, that's when I really started to see like the medical benefit, especially like as far as mental health goes, because there was certain thoughts that I was suppressing that I, couldn't run away from off that train wreck, and it just forced me to sit there and face those thoughts and kind of meditate on them and, really understand how I felt about a lot of things. So in a lot of ways, it was like therapy. So, with the train wreck was my therapist, to the point where it was just showing me these thoughts and these images or whatever. Not necessarily images, but just, well, I guess, yeah, you could say images or, memories or whatnot. And, as I kept going on that like journey of self-exploration, I just, started being more and more honest with myself. And, eventually it got to the point where, over the course of the years, it got to the point where, I just felt like I needed to like tear down almost everything I had built on, like the fake exterior of everything being cool and all it, like, as far as everything being fine with me, because you put on the outward face to be fine for everybody else, but it came to the point where I felt like I needed to tear down everything I had built on top of that and start fresh and really be okay, and then build up again from there. So that's why I kind of like just kind of went dolo, like lone wolf again, and just for years, really honestly, to this point, and just been kind of doing my own thing, getting to know me, and just healing, like I said. And I thank cannabis a lot for that, because had it not been for cannabis, I probably would have my head wrapped up in something else, because I was super into just like working super hard, like, put your head down and, after 40, 50 years, you'll retire. And then, but you look up now and, the baby boomers can't even get their retirement. So, I'm like, you're going to have to make your own retirement. And, at this rate, working for salary is like, okay, even if they give you 100,000 a year and you have to be there 70, 80 hours a week, is that really maximizing, your time over the course of your life? And, I just attribute cannabis helping me think all of those things, because these are a lot of things. There's a lot of things that people don't want to think on a daily basis, because if they thought those things, then they'll start feeling those things and feeling those things to be true, and being really generally just unhappy with life and where it is at that moment. But also you have to look at, really doing the real work to get better yourself, because it's not like you can just smoke and everything's going to be okay. For me, I look at it as a way to really just face the thoughts that I have in the back of my subconscious and my mind, and really try to explore why I feel the way I feel about certain things, and why I, act the way I act or something, like, just find the reason why. Because I find that there's generally a deeper meaning behind a lot of the things we do and say. So again, that was a very long answer to a question. And I really don't feel like I touched on everything. Especially as, we could sit here and have a whole podcast on PTSD. I'm sure that conversation will come up But yeah, let's go ahead and have our final smoke break of the evening. Cheers. All right, guys. So there was also in the Reddit comments under the post, there was also a pretty big gun control debate. And at this point, we're already about an hour in, so I don't think I'm going to get into gun control this episode. Definitely in the future, we will have that discussion. One thing I will say, though, is that, the thing about laws is, number one, only law-abiding citizens follow laws, obey laws. And on top of that, when you talk about law enforcement, that's really only after the fact. Meaning that's after the law is broken, 9.9 times out of 10. So the law's not really protecting as many people as you would want to think. I mean, sure, there's people that don't do things because they're illegal, but that's basically a law-abiding citizen. I mean, they're probably closer to the line of criminal than, the goody two-shoes angel type person. But, the bottom line is there's people out there that don't care about going to prison for life, don't care about dying. So there's not really any punishment you're going to threaten them with that's going to deter them from doing what they want to do. So we can put as many laws as we want to put on anything. This doesn't just apply to gun control. But there's always going to be a black market. So what you're doing by just putting, all you're doing by enforcing strict gun control laws over every state is creating a situation like, Chicago, where they do have a concealed carry permit program as far as I'm aware of, but it's apparently very hard. Well, I can't say how hard it is to get into it. It's not as easy as it is down south, but the point is it's always going to be easy to buy a gun off the black market. No, I understand that a lot of guns on the black market are stolen from homes. So if you take the guns away from the legal gun owners, then they don't have anybody to steal them from. But, guns still, come in on trains and trucks, and, there's still people getting crates of guns. Not all the guns are being stolen from outside the houses. Very few of them are being they're not going to the gun store and purchasing them over the counter, the same way cocaine's not sold at Walmart, and it's on every block. Well, maybe not every block, but it's not hard to find. That should just tell you everything you need to know. We've had multiple prohibitions fail in this country already. So, we got to try to take different approaches. We have to try to attack the problem. If you want to, that's just my opinion. You can't make the guns disappear. And I said I wasn't getting into gun control, so I'm cutting this off short. But, I think we have to stop talking about impossible solutions. The debate between, about the nuclear weapons, the people for nuclear weapons, they argue that they're necessary for a nuclear deterrent, and then the people that argue against nuclear weapons say, you know, no weapon like this should ever exist, like just from a human perspective. And it's like, while you can see where they're coming from, you have to acknowledge that these weapons do exist. There's no way to, you know, uninvent them. So they will exist. And basically, as long as that's true, I would rather live in the country that has them. You know, that's just me. Just like I would like an opportunity as a law-abiding citizen to own a firearm, to, you know, if somebody comes in my house with one, I'd like the opportunity to kill them before they kill me. And hopefully after hearing my story, you can understand why I feel that way. But I hope to never be in that situation. But that's just the reality. I don't see any amount of gun laws preventing criminals from, like, if a criminal wants to shoot somebody, they're going to get a gun one way or the other. It might become harder to do that, I guess you could say, if you know, but it's not going to stop. Even if you delete guns from the history, then, you know, your big brawly dudes are going to, you know, start winning again and beating people to death and melee weaponing people to death. You know, you're going to start seeing a return of the samurai and shit like that. So anyway, guys, like I said, like, y'all done got me started in here. I said I wasn't going into gun control. We'll save that for another episode. But really, I want to thank y'all for tuning into this first episode, man. I know I was kind of all over the place in areas. This story, like I said, I haven't really told it a bunch, but I just wanted to start this platform off this way because maybe that's how I should have been starting off, you know, all relationships and friendships, like with that as the lead. That way everything else is in focus as to why I am the way I am. So yeah, what I want for this platform though is I want this to be like a discussion. I don't want it to feel like I'm just talking at people, you know, which is why I wanted to open up with my personal story or whatever, to encourage other people to, you know, maybe feel, you know, inspired to go ahead and share that with us, like share their stories or their thoughts. And, you know, maybe if you have some questions, drop those down in, you know, the comments on YouTube, or like I said, by the time you hear this, there will be a subreddit for the podcast. You know, on Twitter, I'm at AfroDabMarai. Of course, all links will be in the description, everything like that. But yeah, man, let's get connected. Let's start a platform. Let's help each other, you know, help each other. Yeah, help each other, help ourselves, I guess I was gonna say that. But yeah, man, 2020, let's make this our best year yet, man. Captain Smoke, I appreciate y'all watching Higher Learning. See you next Tuesday at 4:20.